And Mr. Secretary, to the point of needing Congress to act, what Senate Republicans are pushing for really right now is very similar to H.R. 2, which passed the House, the Secure the Border Act. And just to name a couple of things in it, restart construction on the border wall, increase the number of Border Patrol agents, limit asylum, narrow the president's parole powers. Why is that unpalatable to the administration?
I would say two things. One, we've presented proposals that address the situation, that provide real practical solutions, and also do not do violence to our fundamental values. We are a country of refuge. We do have asylum laws. We do have refugee laws. We abide by our international obligations that are long-standing. And so that is my response to that. Some of the proposals are reasonable and worthy of discussion. Others are frankly not.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Biden's border crisis, which politically speaking, after the economy, is probably the second most important issue that is hurting the Biden administration, okay? For whatever reason, it took a record number of illegal immigrants flooding into the country in order for Americans to realize that illegal immigration is bad. And now you have MAGA hat wearing black people in Chicago demanding that the border be closed, that we build a wall, saying they want Trump, right? They want Trump back. Okay. It's crazy how this country has to go to hell in a handbasket in order for people to realize that the orange man wasn't so bad. Now, in this video, we got to talk about Karine Jean-Pierre, who is the Affirmative Action Press Secretary, which, by the way, apparently, if you question the qualifications of a so-called woman of color, especially a black woman, because in 2023, despite the painfully obvious reality that some people are simply not qualified for the job and that they got their job because they have infinity stones of wokeness, not because of merit, you can't question that, right? You can't say that out loud. You can't say, I don't think that you're qualified. I think the only reason you got the job is because you won the woke genetic lottery that allowed you to compete competitively in the victimhood Olympics, right? This is essentially what it is, okay? And part of the reason why is because, again, you're doing a terrible job. There has not been a worse press secretary in history than Karine Jean-Pierre. But again, apparently, if you question the credentials of obvious affirmative action hires, people like, for example, the president of Harvard, who people are saying, hey, she might not be qualified for the job, you're racist.
It's racist. I mean, no one has produced a shred of evidence that shows that the sole qualification that President Gay had was that she is a black woman. That's insulting. It defies logic. And the fact that of those presidents who all came under intense scrutiny, that only one has been called out as a so-called diversity or affirmative action hire just speaks to what black women in this country have gone through historically and continue to go through every day. She's clearly qualified, and really, I'm perplexed to try to figure out what does race have to do with the criticism that she hasn't handled the protests on her campus correctly. They just see this as an opening to further sow racial division and to further their campaign of trying to attack any efforts around diversity and anti-racism.
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. You love to see it. You have a group of woke revolutionaries crying racism while you have another group of woke revolutionaries crying anti-Semitism, okay? I love the woke war, right? The woke war is pretty entertaining. It's fascinating stuff. But anyways, back to affirmative action hire Karine Jean-Pierre. Even CBS, this CBS reporter is going to be fed up with her BS and the fact that there's really no point in having these press conferences with her as press secretary because she literally never answers questions. And when it comes to the border, the Biden administration has been extremely evasive of answering questions because it's a situation that they really don't want to deal with, right? It is a lose-lose situation for them, and they're desperately trying not to talk about it. And this reporter is going to get fed up with Karine Jean-Pierre in her non-answers that she always gives to pretty straightforward questions that she should have pretty straightforward answers to. And it's pretty entertaining. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Two things. Just days after taking office and shortly after issuing that legislation that has gone nowhere in Congress regarding immigration and the border, the president issued an executive order saying he would, quote, restore and strengthen our own asylum system, which has been badly damaged by policies enacted over the last 4 years and contravened our values and caused needless human suffering. Our reporting, others' reporting, indicates the White House, through sources in the administration, is open to an authority that would allow it to suspend asylum processing when there's a spike in border crossings. Wouldn't that be a major policy reversal and revert back to the previous 4 years?
I'm just not going to go into sourcing from here. I'm not going to get into specifics. There are negotiations happening. Not going to negotiate from the podium. I'm going to let the conversation happen. We have to find a bipartisan compromise. That's what the president said. That's what the president believes in order to deal with this issue. And you started off your question asking, or laying out actually, that the president did put forth, and you laid that out in your question, a comprehensive immigration reform plan.
Okay, so again, what you have here is another non-answer from Karine's Jean-Pierre, right? Again, I don't see the point of having any of these press conferences when you ask this person a direct question that she should be able to answer, right? It's simply, hey, do you guys now agree with a policy that you didn't agree with in the past? Okay, more specifically, do you agree with being able to suspend asylum processing when there's a spike in border crossings, right? Which is something that previously the administration disagreed with. Okay, but now, according to sources inside the White House, they're currently trying to negotiate with Republicans on a bipartisan compromise, which I'm going to talk about that more in a little bit. When it comes to immigration. Okay, so did you change your policy position? She can't even answer the question. I don't want to get into specifics. You always say that as an answer to every question. When can you ever get into specifics, right? If you can't ever get into specifics, there's no difference between talking to you and going and reading some article from the New York Times, right? Why even talk to you if you can't ever get into specifics about anything? If you can't come to the press secretary, the mouthpiece of the White House, to get a straight answer on the policy of the White House, then what is the point of having the press conference? There is no point. I mean, I'm sick and tired of this, and I think a lot of people are getting sick and tired of this.
He did that on day one, and it is going on 3 years. On 3 years.
He spent pushing that
On
bill
3
with
years.
Congress.
Here's the
Because he's
thing.
met with them on foreign policy,
Right.
on fiscal cliffs,
And we
on
have,
budget, and it's never been about
I hear
immigration.
you, Ed, and we
Facts. Biden has not spent any time on immigration, right? He's not really trying to pass immigration reform. He's not trying to. And that's part of the reason why they're so upset with Eric Adams, because Eric Adams is basically trying to force Biden to deal with an issue that Biden doesn't want to deal with, right? He does not want to deal with his issue or address the issue because it's a no-win for him, right? If he actually attempts to close the border, then basically the far left is going to make him look like Trump, right? If he continues to ignore the problem and allow the border to continue to be wide open, which it is, then he's going to lose moderates. Okay, again, this is a no-win situation for the Biden administration. And again, this is why they don't really want to deal with the issue. They have not spent any time at all really on immigration. Biden never talks about the issue. He never brings it up. He doesn't deal with the issue. Okay, and so this is a very valid point here being brought up by this CBS news reporter about how it doesn't seem like Biden, he doesn't care about the border at all, right? He doesn't give a damn. What happened to Kamala? Kamala was supposed to be the border czar. I think Kamala tapped out 2 years ago. She said, oh, hell no, I'm not taking on this one, right? This is not going to be my issue, right? Give me something easy, okay? Give me something easy.
We have regular conversations with congressional leaders and congressional staff about an array of issues, including this. I mean, you cannot send a bigger message to Congress and the American people when you say when you put out your first piece of legislation is on this issue, is on reforming immigration, right? Is on fixing.
Flat when you spend very little public time as president talking about the issue, meeting with congressional leaders on the issue specifically, or doing anything else other than having you come out here and say, we issued a bill on day one.
I disagree. It's not
plus not answered any questions, right? And he's right about that because, again, he's calling out the political games, right? It's one thing to introduce legislation, to say that you introduce legislation, which again, the details of that legislation are important. Is that a bill to close the border? No. Biden introduced a bill to basically give amnesty to illegal immigrants, to fund more paperwork processing. He's not actually really trying to fix the border, right? He's trying to make the problem even worse. So it's not like you're really trying to fix the problem. But if you actually really wanted to pass that piece of legislation, then you would be doing what most politicians do when they want to pass a piece of legislation and deal with the problem, which is to advance the legislation, propose it, and then to start to talk with stakeholders and other politicians and your colleagues and to push the issue in the media. That's how you actually push a policy proposal. Biden's not doing that. To say that, well, I just proposed it and, it's everybody else's fault that nothing's been done with it. That's ridiculous. That's nonsense. That's not how politics works. You have to put public pressure out there in order to actually push a piece of legislation. Biden hasn't done that because he's not trying to deal with the problem at all.
Just issue a bill. Like not too long ago, back in the spring, we put forth policies on trying to make sure that because Congress didn't help, on trying to put forth policies that try to make the immigration system humane, right? Humane.
Again, having nothing to do with actually closing the border. Making it humane just means we're going to give amnesty. We're going to allow more illegals in the country. We're just going to do it faster, right? And more efficient. Okay, that's what they want to do. Has nothing to do with closing the border. Listen to her talk.
Actually dealing with the issue that we're seeing at the border. We have taken policy actions after policy actions without the help from Congress, right? And so that is being consistent here. And when you put forth the first piece of legislation to be on this issue that has been broken for decades, I mean, that's what he did as president. That's taking it very, very seriously.
Mitch McConnell alluded to a conversation he had with the president last week. I'm not asking you for names, but can you at least confirm that the president has spoken with lawmakers directly on the ongoing talks to get the supplemental done?
The president has been in regular touch with congressional leaders on this issue, and obviously so has his staff.
And amid everything else today, did he spend any time watching what his son had to say outside the Capitol?
So just a couple of things on that, and I want to be really clear. Look, as you know, Hunter Biden is a private citizen, and so I certainly would refer you to his representatives. Look,
did Biden listen to anything his son had to say? It's a yes or no answer. Always this bullshit, right? Always deflecting the questions to somebody else. And none of these people that she deflects the questions to ever actually come up to the podium to answer the questions, right? I wish that that's what they would do. Anytime she deflects a question to some other group, just have them come to the podium. Just have them rotate since all the questions have to be referred to somebody else, some other department. Just get rid of her and just have them rotate every day. Just rotate them through the White House press room, right? Every single day, and you'll get more information than what she has. But back to the illegal immigration issue, okay, and the border crisis and the current negotiations with Democrats and Republicans. There is absolutely zero need for Republicans to compromise with Democrats on this issue. Why? Because Republicans have an overwhelming amount of support in this country for the conservative solution. We don't need a compromise. We don't need a bipartisan solution. We need a conservative solution. So Republicans should not accept anything less than a conservative solution, which is to completely seal the border by any means necessary, including, but not limited to, using the military, finishing the wall. And I mean actually finishing the wall with all the technology and all the other things they need to keep the illegals out. Okay? We need mass deportations. We need conservative solutions. Okay? And Republicans should not compromise for anything less than that, because Republicans, regardless of whether or not they have the majority in the Senate, they don't have the majority in the Senate. They do have the majority in the White House. It doesn't matter. The American people are on board with the conservative solution. You have the support of the public. So if you have the support of the public, then you got to hold the Democrats and their feet to the fire and make them go along with what the public wants. So I don't want to see no bipartisan compromise. I want to see a conservative solution. That's what I want to see.
The president was certainly familiar with what his son was going to say. And I think what you saw was from the heart from his son.
AKA, he didn't watch it, right? He didn't watch it.
And you've heard me say this. You've heard the president say this. When it comes to the president and the first lady, they are proud of him continuing to rebuild his life. They are proud of their son. But I do want to say a couple of things here that I think I can touch on, is that the president is also focused on the important work of the American people. We just went back and forth about what's happening at the border and how he wants to make sure that we secure the border, and the work that he and his team has been doing on negotiating to make sure that there's a bipartisan compromise. You saw him
again. We don't need a bipartisan compromise, right? We need a conservative solution. Anything less than a conservative solution is a failure, considering the public support behind the conservative solution and the actual gravity of the situation, how bad it is, right? We actually do need a conservative solution.
Yesterday stand right next to President Zelensky. There could not have been a more powerful picture with the President of the United States standing next to President Zelensky, who he and the brave people in Ukraine are fighting for their democracy, right? And this is something that the president has led on, the world on, in making sure that President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine have what they need to beat against tyranny, to fight back against Russia's aggression. And, you heard me at the beginning of this briefing talking about how he met with hostages who were held by Hamas and how emotional and impactful that meeting was. That was a two-hour meeting that he had with the family members, and it was important. It was important. He just convened, right, a meeting on infrastructure. So he's going to remain focused on making sure that we continue to deliver for the American people. That's what the president has done since day one, and that's well, I'll leave it there.
Yeah. So just don't answer the question at all, right? He asked basically two questions. Okay, do you agree with a change in you guys' border policy in regards to processing asylum seekers, and whether or not you're going to do it while there's a spike in border crossings? I can't answer the question, right? I got to refer you to somebody else. I'm not going to negotiate from the podium. Amazing. Did Joe hear his son's speech right at the Capitol the other day? Well, I can't really talk about that. Again, what can you talk about? If you can't talk about anything, find somebody that can talk about something. I'm so serious. And it's about time that the press gets fed up with this, and they should honestly be demanding that she be fired. I'm so serious. She needs to be fired, bro. This doesn't make any sense. Again, as a political commentator, it is important for me to be able to actually commentate on the views of the White House and what they're stating. But they're not stating anything. They're not saying anything. They're not answering any questions. So again, it's extremely frustrating for me, and I'm not even in the room. So again, this is what happens when, you don't care about merit anymore, right? A society doesn't care about merit, and you're hiring people based off their affinity stones of wokeness, based off their genitalia, who they like to sleep with, their skin color. This is what you get. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.